everybody, this is the Week Trend. So, Don Bluth. It's a name that sometimes comes up when you're talking about very, very good animators. And he's maybe not a household name today, but there was a time when Don Bluth was really, a name to count on when it came to animations. I'm not a huge fan of the movie he has done. I think they are okay, but they have their weaknesses, and I will get to that when we get to the review of this movie. I like his style, and I like the way he sometimes tells his stories and toys with your emotions. When you're talking about the best movies that Don Bluth has ever made, usually one movie comes out when you're talking about these things, and that is of course The Secret of NIMH, which is the movie that we are going to take a look at today. So let's find out whether or not you think you're gonna like this movie or not. This is The Secret of NIMH. So Mrs. Brisby, widow after Jonathan Brisby. By the way, did I mention that she was a mouse? If I didn't do that, then, well, she's a mouse. Anyway, she has a huge problem. Her son has pneumonia, and a very bad case of pneumonia. In fact, it is so bad that they can even move him from his bed, with the risk of him dying, because it is also very cold outside, and she risks losing him. There is also this thing that they have to move, because there will come this tractor that will destroy their home. So the clock is ticking. They're living on this farm at an undisclosed location. So what is she going to do? She thinks about seeking the wisdom of the great owl, but will the great owl give her any answers, or will the great owl simply eat her? So that is essentially sort of our story, but we also have Nicodemus, whoever he is, who is looking at her through this magical, cauldron of some kind, and he's talking about an amulet and why that is important. Questions that will be answered eventually. The Secret of NIMH has one huge flaw that prevents it from becoming one of the greatest animated movies of all time. Because at around, the 35-minute mark or something like that, the movie had been going on for almost half of its runtime. I was getting restless. I was thinking, what is this? I don't care about this. I don't care about Mrs. Brisby or her son or the rest of these characters. They're kind of annoying, they're kind of uninteresting, and there is no stakes here, and I'm not interested in any of these things. That was what I was thinking. But then they did something. They did something that was so impressive that I said, whoa, shit! Because they went essentially from, going into, first, second, third gear and, trotting along nicely. But then they somehow found, bam, sixth gear, and then we're off to the races. They introduced a whole bunch of new characters. They introduced a backstory that was just so awesome, and they created an entirely new universe essentially for them to play in that had so many layers and had so much creativity, and everything just went from here to there. And the only movie that I can think about that has a similar thing is Snow White. Snow White is a fairly bad movie that goes into cinematic ecstasy when they deliver what is arguably the greatest ending of all time and one of the greatest sequences that has ever been made into film. This movie does not quite the same thing, because up until the 35-minute mark, when Don Bluth all of a sudden realized, hey, I'm gonna have to make a movie here, so I'm just gonna use all of these things that I haven't used before, and now we're going to make it the great movie I was thinking about from the beginning. It reaches a far higher level, but it rose from a sort of okay level to a very, very high level. As with Snow White, it rose from a fairly bad level to the stratosphere. But anyway, so I think that if you could have introduced these things in a much earlier stage, then this movie would have been fantastic. It would have been an absolute masterpiece. Because the first half of the movie feels kind of irrelevant. They do reference some small little stuff here and there eventually, but for the most part you could have cut out lots of stuff from the start of the movie and it wouldn't have mattered. Even though they did one thing in this movie that I really appreciate that they do in movies, that the movie asks you questions. Why did this happen? Movie asks you. And you're thinking, yeah, why did that happen? And when you're thinking about it, you store that in the back of your memory, and when the movie pays it off, you go, oh, I'm glad that I asked those questions and I thought about that, because now that thing meant so much more. The movie did this and it was very effectively made. I think this movie is absolutely great. It could have been an immortal classic, but now it has to be settled with a very good animated movie. Now, Don Bluth's weaknesses when it comes to his movies is usually that the voice acting is usually not that great. Another thing that is not that great is also the characters. They can sometimes be a lot herky-jerky, and this movie is not absent from bad characters, because I mean, Mrs. Brisby is a really good character. There is nothing wrong with her. But her children, they are very annoying, and I was not interested in what they were going to do ever, and I didn't like them. But Jasper, the crow, he was an excitement assassin, and every time he showed up I wanted to strangle him. He was just the worst type of comic reliefs that you could ever hope to not have in a movie. So, is The Secret of NIMH a movie that you should watch? Most definitely. It is an excellent animated movie. You do have to take it with a bunch of characters that you will not be that interested in, and the start of the movie is a bit wonky. But once you get to roughly 5 minutes before the half point of the movie kicks in a gear I didn't know it had, and it becomes excellent. And if it could have done all of those things at an earlier stage, I probably would have given it, I mean, 10 points more, but now it's going to have to settle with being a very good movie that deserves its stamp of approval as an early 80s classic that you should definitely watch. It's not must watch, but it definitely should watch. Fantastic animations, great characters, and apart from, as I said, the slightly dodgy start of this movie, the second half of this movie was nice short of excellent, and I give The Secret of NIMH 83 points. Is it a perfect movie? No, it is not, but it is a memorable movie that is going to stay with you for a long time, because it has so many fantastic themes and creative bits to it that I absolutely love. I just wish that they could have introduced them at an earlier stage. Then you could have played around with this thing even more. So which one is your favorite when it comes to the Don Bluth cinematography? Comment below and I'll see you next time from, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.